Shut up and sit down.
All right. Hi, everybody. Party peeps. Jimmy Rhodes coming at you from the safe space at Channel 99 Studios. On YouTube's Channel 99 Studio. Hit that like and subscribe button and all the other good stuff and follow what we're doing. This is episode 2 of Sorry About Your Feelings. I am here with my good friend Ginger Christensen, whom, how long we known each other?
Oh, like a year.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I swear I met you a long time ago.
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was a year ago.
Yeah, well, true. Okay. I met you before, though.
Yeah?
Somewhere.
Oh, you know, it's really possible because I know everybody from everywhere all the time.
Right.
I've toured around so much, and you just kind of forget, and it's not a commentary on anybody. It's that you meet so many people in a day sometimes that you just...
I get it.
Unless you have a really good reason, like you've formed a deep interactive bond or hatred, you will not remember.
I agree. Well, I remember a conversation we had. You remembered, you at least knew of me from Rival Entertainment.
Yeah. From
all the shows I've booked over the years.
Yeah, I think we knew about each other because we had different entertainment companies, but I think we only met like last July.
Okay, that makes sense. So It's one of those things where we knew of each other but never actually met until last year.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me because I was sitting here going like, I don't remember where we ever met.
Yeah, it was at Liquid at a club night that I was running called Nocturnum, and that was the first time we met because you were like, hey, I'm out and about and I'd like to finally meet you and come and talk some business. And I'm like, okay, well, this is where I'm at. So
okay, so that makes sense. Gotcha. Which ended up turning out really well.
Yeah, because I helped you with Lion Fest, which you put on like the very next month.
Yeah.
And I helped you get the venue for that and stuff. And that was really good, I think.
Did I ever thank you for that?
Yeah. You thanked me a whole bunch for that.
Okay,
and it's very nice of you.
Yeah, well, it was very nice of you to do that for me. So, a little bit about you. You are a business owner, obviously.
Yes. With
salon-related things. Tell everybody a little about that.
Yeah, so... I run a few businesses, and they all kind of work together. So I have Wicked Wonderland Entertainment, which is my entertainment company and record label. And so my record label distribution is all over the world.
Oh, nice.
My entertainment company, before lockdown, we were running events all over the country and also in Canada and Mexico.
Oh, wow. Whereabouts in Mexico?
I think that the promoter that I was working with there was somewhere close to Mexico City.
Okay.
Yeah, and so Mexico City and places like that, they still have, well, before lockdown, I don't know how they're doing in Mexico these days, I should check. They have a very thriving goth industrial scene, which is the kind of events I tend to put on. It's all subculture, really, so we do steampunk and punk and stuff that has no genre at all as well. But in Mexico, it's almost like if you went back to post-punk in the 80s, and they're still doing that. They have, and this isn't my show, they have this big thing every year that I really want to go to, and it's called Viva Glam, and they get hundreds of thousands of people there, and they are all like decked out in their goth wear and done up, and it's an amazing event, and it's huge. It's bigger than most things we get in the U.S. anymore over the last decade. So they did pretty well down there when I was helping to put on events in that direction. I didn't always get to go to every event I was putting on. Sometimes I was just running events from a distance and helping with organization and putting my label on it, so that would get different promoters a lot more people because I'm better known. And that was always kind of my direction that I wanted to take, is being able to build up subculture and help other promoters, kind of like I helped you.
Right.
Like, all of this stuff needs to happen, and the music scene needs to never die. And
agreed.
Yeah. Isn't this killing you right now?
Yeah.
Driving me insane.
Well, we had to do in my last band well, I guess I didn't tell you about that either. We had to do 2 live streams in April and May because of all this. And that was all we could do.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, oh my God.
We're doing stuff like that with the entertainment company. We're running shows and we're marketing it around the world with entertainers from all over the world. And what we do is we pre-record the video and then we put on a party, like a chat party where everybody watches the stuff at the same time. And they might do like a little home party with their polycule or their buddies or whoever it is they're comfortable having around in their various homes. But we do kind of a chat party and people will take pictures and videos of themselves at, participating in the party. And that's worked really well. And then they get a copy of that video to keep forever.
Oh, cool.
And so the next one is the Wonderlander Tea Party, and that's on the 19th. And
Of September.
Of September.
Gotcha.
Yeah, for whenever this airs. Yeah, so it's on the 19th of September, and we're doing like exclusive band interviews with that and things that you might not even get to see if you were at a live party, because you may not always get to talk to this DJ or this person in this band or get to know them. So yeah.
And you do a lot of DJ work too, right?
Yeah, I DJ and I tour as a DJ as well, and I have a band, which is also on my record label.
Lithium Dolls.
Lithium Dolls.
Yes. And
yes.
Bones is in that, right?
Bones sometimes.
James.
Yeah. So sometimes we take different people with us. My primary bandmate is Carrie Dykstra.
Oh, okay. I know Carrie very well. Yeah. I love
and,
Carrie.
Yeah, he's my primary bandmate. And then we take different people on the road with us to do road gigs.
Yeah.
So sometimes we'll bring this person that plays a bass or this person that plays maybe a violin this time. And we take dancers, and we usually take a DJ to play the backing tracks. Because Carrie and I write all the backing tracks. I write most of them, but he started to write them with me a little bit. And or at least come through and edit and make sure that it sounds right and master.
Okay.
And I can't play all of that at the same time as sing the song.
Right, yeah.
So
that gets tough.
It's still me performing all the things. A lot of times I'm even plugging my keyboard in and recording that, and then making it different instruments, although some of it's samples and stuff.
Do you run loops and whatnot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So we do that, and so that's on the record label. So there's Wicked Wonderland. And then I also have Wicked, which is my cosmetics company and my aesthetic company where we do spa stuff.
Okay.
And so it especially caters to underground people, and so cosmetics that they might enjoy and colors they might enjoy, and all of the spa lines are really cool names. We have like the zombie line, and there's the sunblock is like the daywalker block.
Nice.
Yeah, and there's like the fairy sun shield, which has glitter in it so that you can have sunblock with glitter.
Do you have a Blade Daywalker sunscreen?
Yeah, well, I couldn't put Blade on it,
okay.
But it is about that level of sunblock.
You said Daywalker, and my comic book mind immediately went to Blade the Vampire Hunter.
Yeah, well, that is what I named it after, but okay. Licensing.
Yeah, totally. There's this thing. Thanks, Marvel Comics.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I have all of that with the cosmetics, and all of it kind of is its own synergy and works together.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's what you should do. Like, you should have branding. So once you become really good as a promoter, or once you become really good as a rock star, or whatever it is you're doing, comedy, like my partner does, you want your own branding. So maybe you're selling your artwork along with it, or maybe you're selling t-shirts, or maybe like me, you're selling cosmetics. Sorry, I moved away from the camera. It sounded all funny.
No, you're okay.
So maybe now you're doing cosmetics because goth people need makeup.
Right.
You know?
Well, one question I had for you, since you've been talking about this, in the goth, what does that consider, like a lifestyle, or a genre. I hate that word, by the way, but what's goth considered? More of like a lifestyle type thing, kind of like punk rock?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So dealing with a lot of people in that arena, if you will, makeup is a very big part, both for the men and the women involved,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, it is. And, I mean, you do you. So one thing that I often teach when I'm teaching people how to do their makeup is the purpose of makeup is to help you to feel and look on the outside like you feel on the inside. So if you feel like a valley girl, by all means, do your makeup like a valley girl.
Oh my God.
And you know, James St. James once said, and he was one of the early founders of the rave scene back in the days of New York and the limelight and all of that. He said, you know, so what? If you look like a troll, or if you feel like a troll, you should look like a troll. You know, so what if you have a hump? Just throw some glitter on it, honey, and go dancing. And so that's a thing that I think we should go with. If you feel like a troll, why not?
Right.
Get really decked out and look like a troll. You know, why not get really decked out and look like devil incarnate or a fairy?
Seems fitting.
You know, yeah.
I also remember, like on the social media stuff in the past, the hooks, the hanging.
Oh, yeah.
And what's the guy's, I know the guy, one of the
Sin.
guys that does it, the tall dude with the long hair.
Okay, so the guy with the top hat?
Yeah.
Is, so that's Hatter.
Hatter.
And
yeah, what's his real name, though? Like, I know his real name.
yeah, it's Jesse Matthews.
Jesse, thank you.
And
Yeah.
Hatter is actually my husband.
Oh, okay.
We were married for a decade. And
I did not know that.
Yeah, I'm pretty old. So my cosmetics.
Hey, I just turned 40, Ginger. Careful.
I'm 42.
You are?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I would have never guessed.
Thanks.
You look great for being 42.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so buy my skincare. Shameless
right?
plug, shameless plug, shameless plug.
No, do it, please. Was it at one point? Wasn't you were called Wicked Garden, like on Instagram?
Yeah, so I had a shop in Nampa called Wicked Garden for
It was
a
the
little
shop.
while. Yeah,
Okay.
the shop, and that was a pretty cool adventure. So initially, more than a decade ago, that's how long ago I was married. So that's how old that I am. I had a spa with Hatter. What are you
Okay.
talking about? We owned that business together, and we had run it for a number of years, and it was really cool. It was the first of its kind in Idaho, although maybe not in the world. But in Idaho, we had to work with the cosmetology board to kind of change how we operated just to make this be possible. We did, we combined a salon, a massage place, so you could have a spa. You could have facials, you could have waxing, you could have your nails done, and you could get tattoos and piercings in the same location.
Oh, cool.
And he was the body piercer. And I was the esthetician, which is like a spa care professional.
Right.
And
Esthetician dealing with skin, correct?
yeah. So when we parted ways, I gave him that store. And it was a long time later because I was out touring for a number of years with my band, doing promotions, running parties, performing as a burlesque performer, and doing a whole lot of things like that. So I was almost never home because I was always on tour. And then I had a little boy and I had to slow down. So I had Wicked Garden in Nampa because, you know, I put down roots for a little bit. And then I decided I wanted to move again. And so I just went ahead and closed it and opened like a private studio for doing spa work.
And that's what we were talking about earlier in the kitchen. Gotcha. Okay, very cool. So that's kind of a good segue. I'm glad that you mentioned that. So your son, and you said he's 6 now?
Yeah, he's 6.5.
Prince Wiggles, the Destroyer?
Prince Wiggles, the Destroyer of Worlds.
Yeah, he's
boy.
super cute, by the way.
He is
like,
super cute.
all the pictures that you posted of him. So one of the big things that really attracted me to having you on this, you made a post probably, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, a month ago now.
Yeah, maybe.
And it dealt with ADD, which, as I told you, is very personal to me because in 1983 or 84, when I was just a little guy, I was diagnosed with ADD. Preschool they started me off on Dexedrine, which is just basically speed,
Yeah.
pharmaceutical grade. And then in fifth, when I was 5 in kindergarten, it was Ritalin, which is methylphenidate, which is a cocaine derivative, and mixed with pharmaceutical grade amphetamine.
Yeah.
And giving that to someone and as you obviously probably know a lot of this stuff, like your systems aren't developed, fully at that age, et cetera, et cetera.
We are giving our children illegal drugs that have been rebranded as legal drugs.
Correct.
And we have deemed those illegal drugs to be so toxic and dangerous to people
that adults can't take them.
Adults cannot take them and are not allowed to have them
willingly
and willingly and on purpose. And we are giving them to our children. Some people really believe in the meds, and I cannot tell somebody else how to parent. I would suggest against it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Same here. Agreed.
And not to get off on a whole other tangent, because we've had some.
Hey, it's all right.
But the drug war is so freaking ridiculous, isn't it?
Yes.
As long as a pharmaceutical company rebrands it and says it's okay, then it's okay, and don't forget to drink your milk. But if you, as a person, choose to, as an adult, buy it from somebody and take it and use it yourself, whether I think that's a good idea or not, and whether I think that's good for you or not, is irrelevant, because so here you are, and you've chosen to take it yourself, and now you get to go to jail and have your whole life ruined, because shame on you for putting that in your body. How dare you do that? Well, but we can give it to kids.
Exactly.
And as long as...
With a prescription,
though.
Right.
Well, what made that okay? What
That's
were the
question.
things in line that made that okay? Well, the FDA made that okay. Why did they make that okay? Because it takes $1 billion or more to put a drug on the market. So the FDA made it okay because they got paid.
And testing?
Some of it's just paying into the FDA.
Really? Interesting.
So,
how much of that do you know about? I'm very interested in hearing
I know a
about
little bit. I would probably prefer to share some links for research later so I don't get the numbers all wrong. But yeah, some of it goes directly to them. And then what else made that okay? The pharmaceutical industry made that okay. The insurance industry made that okay. Those are all people that got paid. They're all making money. So it's okay for them to be legal drug dealers, but it's not okay for everybody else to be illegal drug dealers. And the only difference between the two is money.
Right.
And there is some testing, but our testing then should have said this is toxic and dangerous to children if it's toxic and dangerous over here. So if all of the things we say over here are true that make it illegal, why are all of these things true? People did some funny things with some numbers,
right.
and that's just it. And some people on the internet are probably going to want to yell and argue about that and be very angry, but this is the safe space, so fuck you.
Very well done. Very well done. That's just a play on words, right?
Yeah, I got it.
Totally. I couldn't help it. When I
was playing on words too. You could go ahead and yell at me, and that's going to be my response.
That's perfect. Well, when I was offered this, we were sitting around, and I was trying to come up with the name. And it just worked out that Sorry About Your Feelings is the acronym SAFE, right?
It's kind of perfect.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously you see kind of what I'm up to with the social media and stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, and whatever happened in this country to being able to civilly disagree? And
good question.
Whatever happened to the idea that journalism is supposed to present you with facts so that you can form your own opinions, instead of being a bunch of op-eds and facts somebody made up and facts somebody was paid to make? And I'm not trying to spew a bunch of conspiracy theories here, because some of that is not correct when you see it out in the world online. Some of it isn't true. but some of it is.
Correct. Very much so.
And so we can't just throw out babies with bathwater, can we? We need to actually look at all of the facts when we form an opinion and go, okay, well, this is similar but not the same.
Right.
And this one can be true, while this one can be not true. And so anyway, back to the drugs and stuff that we are giving to children. One of the top researchers in the country and top doctors on autism spectrum is somebody that is very against these medications. So that's something you can look up. And sometimes I think there are some meds that might be necessary for some children. But when you look at ADHD and most of autism spectrum, people think about things like Rain Man, or they think about things like the kid that's wearing the earmuffs and rocking back and forth, and a lot of spectrum people don't look like that and are not that.
Right.
There probably are some, but most of them are just out walking around having a normal life. And so where you're talking about being diagnosed, and my son is on the border of the spectrum as well, and he's a super awesome kid. And you can definitely tell where that border is. But you can also tell that he is one of the most amazing children in the whole world. And he is really cool and a lot of fun to be around.
Question. He's probably really smart, right?
Oh, extremely smart.
What things is he interested in? And I mean, obviously he's a 6-year-old, so with the mind of a 6-year-old, that's probably so full of questions and imagination and energy.
Yeah.
What are the types of things that he's interested in?
He likes to build.
Okay.
More than anything, everything is always under construction, and that's part of why he's the destroyer of worlds, because in his frantic need to constantly be building, he often destroys things to build something else with them.
Okay, that makes sense. Is he like really into like Legos or things like that? Or is that still a thing?
Yeah, Legos are still a thing. He loves Legos. He'll do the Lincoln Logs.
That's still a thing?
Yeah.
Wow.
He'll do the magnetic blocks. If you give him some 2x4s, he'll sit and build a structure with that.
Nice.
He'll build things out of the table and the lamp and the glass face, and it broke. And
so he has very good cognitive abilities.
Yeah, he was at the top of his class for kindergarten last year, and these days they test out kindergartners. And
test
so
them out. Explain.
You do testing, like they test kids in elementary school. So they do testing. They have
like standardized testing?
Yeah, they have to do standardized testing. And so he was testing out at the very top of his class.
Okay.
The only thing he was a little behind on was, of course, fine motor skills, which is pretty common for ADHD autism spectrum. And so we've worked on that quite a bit, but I've always worked with him because I could tell from an early age that he had this. Most of the men and a few of the girls in my family have had this, and so it's just kind of run along. And so I was able to recognize it pretty early, where I think if I were a different parent, I may still not know.
Understood.
Yeah.
What are some of the symptoms, if you will? I don't like that word really for this, but what are some of the
markers?
What's some of the behaviors, I guess?
Behaviors.
And I think that's a better term. What are some of the behaviors for people that aren't familiar with this?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of them. Somebody with things like ADHD, they might either hyperfocus and be very quiet, or they might have more of a chaotic focus and be bouncing off the walls. Now, we tend to think of ADHD as that second type, where they're so busy and they're talking really fast and they're all over the place. But actually, there is another type where they're just very, very quiet.
Okay.
And you can completely miss it.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and they tend to hyperfocus, and it can mean that they tend to do very well in school if they are learning things they're interested in.
Correct.
Because they will focus.
That's 100% correct.
Yeah, but it can also mean that they don't do well because this isn't something I care about. However, let me show you all about this algebra equation in the first grade, you know?
I do,
So,
yes. I understand that 100%.
So you might see something like that. With people both on the S.A.Y.F part of the autism spectrum and ADHD, and they often overlap.
And when you say Asperger's, you mean Asperger's?
Yeah,
Correct? Okay.
they're still looking for a different term for that, and there's a lot of reasons why, but they're even still trying to get it relisted in the DSM. So there's a lot that we don't know, but there's a lot of things that we do know by now. And so one thing is that both tend to have something called visual chaos. And I think that's the thing you might have commented on. Like, I think it was a couple weeks back.
What the main thing that drew me to that, and we'll come back to the visual chaos because that's a very, very interesting term. I'm very interested in hearing your take on that. Was the fact of, because again, I was diagnosed with the ADD. I don't, and in the 80s, you know, I don't think that, you know, the autism thing was as recognized. And you know, obviously you mentioned Rain Man and the earmuff kid.
Yeah.
The thing that drew me very much was the fact of like the nighttime.
Oh yeah.
Where at night people that are, you know, and I call it having this gift. If you will, that are gifted with these things, because I'm very much this way. The sun goes down and I'm like ready to rock and roll. You know, when the sun's out, I'm like, I want to go to sleep. But as soon as it becomes nighttime, my brain and my circadian rhythm and everything that I do and everything about me just expands exponentially. And so that really drew me when I read that. I was like, wow, that's an amazing thing. So and again, we can kind of move into that, but the visual chaos, like please explain that to people.
Okay, so visual chaos is where maybe you see very clearly and maybe you don't. So you could probably read an eye chart, but maybe not. You might need glasses.
I actually had to put mine on.
Yeah. So what that is it isn't the same as whether or not you can see clearly. It is whether or not your spatial relationships make sense. And so, so somebody with visual chaos, if they are very focused on something, like they might be staring at your eyes or your mouth when you're talking, and a lot of people do learn to compensate that way so that they can listen and understand. They can be very focused on that and not notice everything else in the room. Now, someone like me, I am not on the spectrum, and I'm in a lot of ways, a rather average, secure person, and that's an attachment type. It's not a commentary on my personality per se, but and thinking style. I'm a pretty average person, so I'm looking at you and I'm talking to you. I'm also very aware of a person sitting over there and a person sitting over there, which they are. You guys can't see them, but there's people in here.
There's people in here.
And I'm very aware of what they're doing, even in my periphery. And even though I can't see them entirely, I know what they're up to. I know there's a wall behind me. I can probably remember what's on it or not. I know that there's things around me, and it all makes sense. Whereas somebody having visual chaos, they're either tunnel visualizing on one specific thing, or everything is kind of floating around, and they don't realize it's different for everyone else. So things are kind of floating around and in different places, and they can't quite tell maybe what's going on over there, because everything, and this contributes a lot to ADHD, everything is going on all the time. And wait, what was that? What was that? And they're partially doing that because I'm aware of all of these things, but if something over there caught your attention like a fly, you weren't aware of over there 2 seconds ago. And now there's a fly over there. And so it makes it very hard to focus.
Okay. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and so what we've learned is that for some people with this going on, they actually need a special type of prismatic glasses that makes it so that it puts everything into the correct perspective. But another treatment that's kind of developing and was really interesting for me to try with my little boy was watching 3D movies. So for normal people, normal is the wrong word for the thing I mean. For somebody with average vision.
Okay.
For somebody with average vision, you go to a 3D movie and it is a 3D movie. Stuff is popping out at you, blah, blah, blah. That's how it works, and it's designed to work.
Okay.
For somebody that is having visual chaos, they might see that a little bit or not at all at first. And so for Wiggles, yeah. And so these people tend to get headaches a lot if they try to go to 3D movies and do not like them. Because your brain's reorienting. And so my even mentioning that probably will speak to a few people that are like, wait.
Yeah. Well, is that kind of on the same principle? Remember those, like we grew up in the same time frame. So you remember, I don't know, 6th or 7th grade when they had, you were a couple years older, so the pictures, and you had to stare at them to see what was actually in them. It was like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, with the little viewfinder thingy?
No. They'd be like on a piece, like they were like books of them.
Oh, those.
Yeah, and it was, so it'd be like
and you'd have to stare at them and see the picture, and it's all these weird dots, and then it should pop out at you.
Freaking see them.
Yeah.
Ever. Like, is that kind of run along the same line?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is it's totally on the same lines.
Gotcha. I literally could never find, and it's like, dude, it's a sailboat. It's kind of like in, what was the
you couldn't see that.
Remember Mallrats?
Yeah.
But he's like, dude, I think he says that too. He's like, dude, it's a sailboat. It's like, where? And he's like standing there forever trying to see it. But so that's essentially the same kind of thing, like the 3D movie, the 3D picture, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I don't know about the 3D pictures being this way, but the 3D movies are actually a therapy for the visual chaos.
Okay.
So one thing that you can do and that you can try, and people can try this at home, it costs about $1 for a pair of 3D glasses. You can buy them online all over the place. And you can watch 3D movies for 3D glasses on YouTube. And you want to be careful because some of them are people watching a 3D movie, and if you're an adult, you're not going to know the difference if you really have this problem really badly. You're going to be like, okay, I'm not getting anything. So it's 3D movies for 3D glasses, and with my son, I sat him down to watch this, and I was really shocked because I wanted to kind of give this a try. This wasn't going to hurt anything, you know.
Right.
So let's go ahead and try this out and see what happens. Maybe he'll be entertained. He gets to watch 3D movies. He couldn't see the first two as being anything different. And so he's like, why are we watching this, and why are the colors funny?
Oh, wow.
You know?
And he had the glasses on.
He had the glasses on. And he's just like, okay, the colors are weird and I don't like it. During the third one, all of a sudden, he could see that, and images were popping out of him, and he's getting such a good laugh out of it, and he's going nuts, and he's like trying to grab the stuff, and I'm like, yeah, see? One thing that happens with people when they are having visual chaos is they tend to do some things that you may not realize, especially when it's a child. But this carries on into adulthood as habits. They will do things like cling to walls and hang out on them. My little boy would like to ride doors, and I thought he was just being a butt. And I would always yell at him for doing this, and I didn't realize it was a marker. So he's trying to orient himself in the room.
Okay.
But the room is not in a solid state. So I'm doing that by clinging to this door, and I'm going to swing around on it because it's fun. Now everything's going everywhere. That's great. It's less fun for him now. So maybe I robbed him of something. I don't know.
Well, could it be that as he matures and like some of these things like you know are grown out of, so to speak?
Sometimes they do grow out of it a little bit, and sometimes they just learn to compensate for it so much they just don't even realize that that's what they're doing. And so they might cling to walls. They might, in fact, one time when I was reading about this and I was trying to figure it out, I asked him to stop hanging on to the wall to talk to me, because he would do it all the time. He'd just, like, if he was talking to me, he'd just be, like, up against a wall. I asked him to stop doing that. This poor kid lay down on the floor.
Oh, wow.
He could not stop himself from standing up against the wall, and I never noticed that this was peculiar.
Right.
You might not notice somebody is just leaning on the wall. I do it a lot because, like, I get lightheaded, so
Right.
there are other reasons for doing that, so I just thought he was hanging out. And he straight laid on the floor, and he's just continuing the conversation because he had to cling to something.
Right. So putting himself on the floor oriented him.
Yeah.
In essence.
And I was just like, holy shit. This is a real thing. And
very cool.
And so somebody that has this visual chaos, you can't point at something and tell them to get that. If depending on the degree they have it, they're going to be looking everywhere. What? Kind of like a cat would.
Right. Yeah.
Like, what are you pointing at? If they have an object, so one thing that would frustrate me sometimes before I knew is maybe he would have his shoes and he'd take them off and set them down next to him, and I'd say, you weren't supposed to take your shoes off. We're trying to leave to go somewhere. Put your shoes back on. And he couldn't find his shoes. They were sitting next to him.
Oh, wow.
And because now they are lost into space.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now we just call that we're 40 plus and like, why did I come into this room?
Why did I come into this room? That is a recall problem.
Totally.
That's a whole different deal.
Yeah, totally.
And so you might notice these with your children, or they might be overly clingy to you and always hanging on you. My kid was always doing that. And
this is a way for them to orient themselves.
This is a way for them to orient themselves, or they have. A lot of people with Asperger's are known for having really terrible sense of personal space. And
okay. I see. That makes sense.
And so you'll notice that somebody is doing this where they are either really far from you or they're really close and they're being like a close talker. And
yes.
Like
so many things relate to Seinfeld right now.
Yeah. So you might recognize this going on. It's because they have no idea of that depth perception or your personal space, and it's not that they're not trying to respect that. It's that they have visual chaos and they do not know they are this close to you.
I get it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah,
so,
doesn't it suddenly?
Yes, like very much. Like I'm sitting here as you're talking, like thinking about my younger days.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, in the 80s, like one of the reasons I'm personally so interested in this is because none of this information was a thing.
At all.
Like, it was called ADD back then. Now it's ADHD. Now, like, there's all these different things going on. And so, but hearing this stuff, it's kind of like, wow, am I on the spectrum? Like,
well, and probably ADHD goes on and off the autism spectrum, but it actually, I believe, belongs there.
Yeah.
I'm not an authority to decide that, but some people also believe that it belongs there. And there's a good reason for that, is because some of this, and we don't know if it's all of this, but it's possible. Some of this, and these are in some newer medical journals. I think I read about it the first time 5 years ago. And there's so much information out there, and it's all over the place, and it all contradicts itself. I enjoy reading medical journals. I do it for fun.
Sounds like a men's health magazine.
Yeah. The internet is a men's health magazine.
Like literally. 1 month it's this, and then the next month it's this, but it's the same thing.
And they all change their minds.
But then totally.
Yeah. And so whatever Google has decided is the thing that they want to go with as the narrative, they're going to pop up as, now you're going to see 6 articles that were all copy pasted with the same opinion because we don't want you to think anything else, right? So people will think they're an authority when they didn't understand how to research, and that's okay. But understanding how to research means you need to look at different opinions.
Correct.
Whether you agree or not, part of the point of forming an opinion, and part of how you do that, or finding facts for that matter, is that you have looked at all of the evidence.
Correct.
Instead of just going with your knee-jerk reaction of whatever an op-ed told you.
Oh, I love it.
Right?
Wow.
Okay, so...
Hey, we're taking pot shots right now.
Yeah, I do.
No, and that's
this
good.
This is the safe space. That's
yes,
what
it
we're
is.
about.
It's perfect.
We're going to make some people mad.
I really like how you just said that and how you phrased those things, because one thing I'm finding out to be very just for a side note real quick, one thing I'm finding very much out in my endeavor, if you will, with doing what I'm doing, is that a lot of the stuff that I talk about isn't stuff that I just heard about last week. I'm talking 15 plus years of actually like researching this stuff. And so when I say things that sound very outlandish, a lot of people are, oh, you're just pushing this right-wing narrative. But like I told you, I'm not really on that side either.
Right.
So,
well, and sometimes that's the problem with what happens with the right-wing narratives, and sometimes I think the media does it on purpose, where they take something that is a fact.
yes.
And then they blow it up in a weird way, or a way that is then surrounded by things that are very much not true. And then you cannot believe the fact because everything surrounding it wasn't true. A lot of people think that. Instead, you should look for the part that is that grain of truth, the pearl of wisdom within, and then throw the rest away.
Very nicely put.
Right. And so, back at the thing, what we think is causing autism right now, and ADHD, and it's the same thing, is probably something to do with an irregular level of cortisol. Your cortisol in your brain is dysregulated. And
wow.
yeah, so what that is it is a hormone in your body that is your stress hormone.
Yes, very much so.
And so that ends up damaging your amygdala. What it does then is it wipes out things that would be related to your circadian rhythm, such as your 5-HTP and your serotonin and your GABA regulation and stuff like that, and how all of that works. It wipes that out. It makes it so that those things are then underproduced while it's being overproduced. And there is a reason why you have that function in your brain, is so that in times where you need extreme survival,
fight or flight.
Yeah, that is your fight function.
Got it.
So in times in nature where you would need this, and maybe even for long periods of time too, you would need to live through a hard time, so you would need to survive with your tribe. You're going to need to develop that stress hormone and these things going on in your brain, and you're going to need to be able to do things like hyperfocus. That has a function.
Correct.
It just doesn't have a function in a well-functioning society. It then doesn't make any sense.
So in like everyday life.
Yeah. So the average life that we have now, even through a pandemic, as hard as things are much easier than perhaps living on plains where volcanoes are going off and there's a beast that is going to eat you.
Where you're in survival mode.
Where you're in survival
all
mode.
The time.
All the time.
Yeah.
We are not constantly in survival mode all the time. We are partially right now. And so this does have a function. There is a necessity, but it is misregulated for what is happening. So it is possible that either your brain was wired this way, it might be genetics, it might also be that your mother was having a lot of stress during her pregnancy, which does not make that her fault. But maybe she's having physical stress, maybe she's having emotional stress. Throughout her pregnancy, her cortisol might have been dysregulated,
which in turn affects the fetus.
It affects the baby, and it might be born that way. There might be a combination of those things where genetically you're predisposed, and so since your mom was a little stressed out, then you're just going to be that way.
So it goes into your wiring, essentially.
Yeah, essentially.
Are you familiar with cortisol in the fitness world at all?
Yes.
About how basically like one of the things in the fitness game, when talking with nutrition and stuff with people is like cortisol is one of the reasons why a lot of people cannot get rid of body fat.
Yes.
When they're trying to trim up, and because their cortisol is overproduced, essentially the stress hormone, as you said. So relating that in adults, then, like obviously that's a thing, and that's awesome that you know about that. And going back to the children and from where you just came, so, this thing of kids cortisol production, and again, to be clear, with everyone, like there's an imbalance chemically, if you will, inside the brain of kids that are dealing with these issues that we're talking about.
Yes.
The spectrum and the ADD and the ADHD. I guess it's just ADHD now. It's not ADD any longer.
I think it depends on what you read, because sometimes they classify it as two separate disorders.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so it just depends. Some people say it's only ADHD, and some people classify it as two different things.
Gotcha.
On the same spectrum.
Okay.
And so, yeah, what you'll have then, since you know about the cortisol, is you'll have children that are very skinny. And as they get older, they start putting on a lot of weight that then they just cannot seem to get rid of when they're on the spectrum. And that doesn't happen every time, but it happens often. And you have to, in order to keep that in check, do a lot of things that you're probably doing as a bodybuilder. Sometimes just even bodybuilding itself puts that into check. Sometimes you need supplements. Often you need the supplements. And really, you can correct a lot of these behaviors in childhood
through nutrition.
Through nutrition and
Bingo.
proper supplementation. And so with Wiggles, for instance, we saw when he was going through his terrible twos that then ended up being terrible threes and fours, that he would have meltdowns a lot.
Okay.
And he would just have, like, if you gave him any amount of wheat at all, if you gave him a cookie, 20 minutes later, you can expect that he's going to be angry.
So he has a gluten allergy, I take it?
What happens is, for some reason, a lot of people that are Aspie's, they are lacking an enzyme that digests it, and so it's not exactly celiac, it's kind of an intolerance, and it can get worse over time and even develop into celiac later on in life if they keep eating the wheat. And that's funny because a lot of them really crave the wheat, and they want to eat nothing but things like pizza or whatever chips, and that's a really hard thing to get them off of because they really want it. But we think that the cortisol is wiping out the enzymes in your body that are able to digest that.
Aid in digestion and whatnot.
Yeah.
So my question now, having said that, this is really good, because now, obviously, like, my main source of income is the fitness thing, and nutrition is like, I went to school for that, and like that's the basis of what I teach people.
Yeah.
So with the chemical imbalances that are happening, and obviously you've studied enough that you can confidently speak about this and share this. What value would you put on nutrition with children, especially from being babies, from for instance, like we know that breastfeeding is good for children because of the fats in the milk that come out for brain development. That's one big thing. What role and what's your take on children's nutrition as far as what things we should be promoting for children to be eating, and I mean as a society and as a whole and as adults and whatnot? Oh yeah. What things should we be promoting for children, like just in general?
Well, I'll tell you what I know so far, because there's always more stuff to find, and a lot of parents have had some better results with some other things or differing results with some other things. I personally, because we recognize this early, when my son is the most outgoing little boy now, and I've taught him things like to trust his instincts about who to talk to and who not to talk to, because you never know if somebody that might hurt you is going to be a stranger or someone you know.
Right.
And so he's very outgoing. When he was a baby, he wouldn't make eye contact with anyone but me.
Wow.
He wouldn't let anyone hold him but me. Most of the time. Sometimes, very rarely.
Is he empathic at all, by the way?
Oh, very.
Okay, well,
yeah.
You said that, and that immediately came to mind.
Well, think about it. If you are hardwired to be able to have the instincts for the maximum survival, you're also going to be very good at being able to read people and being able to imprint on them or off of them and things like that. So there's your empaths.
I get it. Okay. That makes perfect sense.
And not everybody on the spectrum is that type. It's often described more as attachment sciences, anxious attachment. But a lot of people on the spectrum are anxious attachment. Most of the people on the spectrum are anxious attachment. And so as a baby, I breastfed him late. I breastfed him till he was 3.
Okay.
Because we recognized that he is very advanced. He can do all of these things, but he is also doing things like he doesn't sleep. And he wouldn't make eye contact, and he would cling to me and wouldn't want anyone else at all. And there's various things that you notice and recognize, especially when you've been around children like that, where certain people he would be okay, but most of the time not. And if I left the room, he would just lose his mind. So he always had to have mom around all the time. So we breastfed him late, and I think that helped a lot with his brain development. And then later we did start supplementing with things like that naturally occur in the body. And for a long while. So we do things like 5-HTP, which when your cortisol is way too high, you don't have that. We also did things like taurine.
Really?
Yeah. So taurine is an enzyme that also naturally occurs in your body. If you're getting damage to your amygdala, if you're having too much cortisol, it does cause damage to your brain. It creates an imbalance of glutamate in your brain.
Really?
And glutamate is important.
Wow.
You need that in your body.
Yes. And
you also need some of it in your brain. But if you're having way too much, then you are going to have trouble functioning. And so we find this even with people that have brain trauma and TBIs, that one thing that really helps them is taking taurine, especially for things like migraines. 2,000 milligrams of taurine stops a migraine in its tracks if you take it when it first starts.
Wow. Taurine is, if I remember right, comes from cow stomach?
It can.
Like supplemental wise?
It depends on the supplement you buy.
Yeah.
So it can.
Okay.
But it can also, they find it in a number of different foods, and it naturally occurs in humans.
Foods. Got you.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of like the energy drinks.
Yeah,
I read something one time where that was the they were like, yeah, and it's kind of like creatine, which is an amino acid.
Yeah. Comes
from cow blood.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think the Red Bulls, I don't remember if that turned out to be true or not, but I know that went around about Red Bull. And I don't super recommend taking those or drinking those.
Me neither.
That yellow dye is going to shut down your
Well,
kidneys.
just taurine, I know.
Yeah, she knows.
Yeah, totally. I know taurine was in the Monster energy drinks for sure.
Yeah.
I used to drink those back when I competed, actually actively.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the dieting down process is not pleasant. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
So, you know, on top of all the other supplements, it's like you need energy because you're hungry all the time for 12 weeks.
Yeah.
So I would drink 2 or 3 Monsters a day just to give a jolt so I could train people and stuff, because I would be nodding out from my lack of carbohydrates and things like that.
Yeah, see, carbs can be your friend.
They are your friend.
If you're active enough, carbs are your friend.
Yes.
Those diets that want you to cut out all carbs altogether, those are for people that are inactive.
Steroids.
Or on steroids.
Well, they're very dangerous because of the fact, and this I'm really glad that we got on the topic of nutrition. This is something that I'm very strong with, especially with kids. Just one little thing, like 60 grams of carbohydrates a day causes your central nervous system to function properly.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I've dealt with a lot of people doing the what's the keto diet.
Oh, even in the spa industry, we super don't like keto.
Well, keto was designed for a lot of people that don't know. I'm not exactly sure who designed it and whatnot, but actually a better way of putting this was it was popularized in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s for professional bodybuilders.
Yeah.
And that's why I said steroids, because they have the extra help with the recovery, and
Yeah.
so they're able to do that for an extended period of time to get more lean and get away with it, versus people that are doing it now, which what they're ultimately doing is depriving themselves of essential nutrients.
You're starving, and then
Yes.
and people are going to disagree with this a lot because some people really swear by it.
Oh, they
And
swear
if
by it.
If it works for you, cool. But what you're actually doing is starving your body of a lot of
Correct.
things.
Correct.
And then the things that you don't hear about is how it causes you to lose your hair, which
Correct.
I have seen.
Yes.
In the spa industry, you lose skin elasticity. So I have people coming to me that now they all have all of this loose hanging skin, not just from the weight loss, but because your skin is no longer sticking to your muscle tissue.
Correct. And it's lost
yeah.
its collagen, right?
Yeah, it's lost its collagen. You're breaking down your fascia, which is that connective tissue. Like
Yeah, your muscle tissue.
yeah, between the muscle and the skin. So like fascia kind of looks like if you ever break open an egg and you peel that layer off.
Like a hard-boiled egg? Yeah.
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 And it does kind of look like that, and it kind of connects all the things in between. And if you've ever skinned something, then you really know what fascia looks like, but a lot of society doesn't do that anymore. So
Well, no, we have slaughterhouses for that, Ginger.
yeah, well, you like, is Burger King made from real cows? 'Cause,
Yeah, no kidding. No shit.
I mean, I'm all for eating cow meat, but could we just not kill the cow?
Right.
Right. So no, they die for that.
Well, I mean, it's part of life, right?
Yeah, that is a part of the food chain, and you can choose to supplement your diet and not participate in it, and that's all well and great and good for you. But keto really isn't that good, and I extra don't recommend it for children.
No, not at all. Not even close.
We do supplement with Wiggles, and it really made a huge difference in his life. And he will tell me, like, if he has grown and so the supplement needs to be increased, he is very aware, and he doesn't like it. He doesn't like that feeling, because how do you feel when you're all stressed out? When you're all stressed out all the time and you're wired all the time, and you may not know the difference, but average people, because they need to kind of get it, when you can't calm down because you're really upset and you can't sleep at night because you're really upset and you're way up here when normally you're down here, you don't like it. And so with supplementation, he's now kind of here. He's not clear down here. He's kind of here. And he doesn't like it when he starts being up here. It's uncomfortable.
So he's able to recognize now. See, this is great because, again, when we were kids, like our parents didn't know any of this shit.
He's so smart, and I've taught him to be very self-aware. So he had come to me at a certain point and told me, I don't feel right. And
that's really amazing.
Yeah, and so sure enough, every time he does, it's because he has grown and gained some weight, and he needs.
So and when that happens, obviously, and you said this, like you have to increase the supplementation.
Yeah, and we do it very carefully. I work things with his pediatrician. I have a counselor I consult. I have some other people. Like, I don't just randomly experiment on my kid. I really don't recommend people do that. You need some people to consult that are experts in this sort of thing. That doesn't mean you always have to go and get the special diagnosis or an IEP. Those are sometimes beneficial, but sometimes they aren't, and you have to weigh that out, because with an IEP in school, and that's a specialized program, most schools are not equipped for a gifted child.
Correct.
And so he doesn't need to be in special or remedial stuff. He needs to be in gifted stuff. He's not behind.
Right, he's advanced.
He's advanced.
Yeah.
And so the IEP would actually work against him and put him in special classes that he wouldn't want to be in.
Why do they do that?
Well, because sometimes they do need that, but
yeah,
and schools are not always equipped for having a variety. They're equipped for having children that mostly function the same. And
so it's basically like a cookie cutter system.
Yeah, it's a cookie cutter system. They want the children to be able to learn to adapt to the way they think society should function, and not have them be able to just simply be. And I don't, you know,
You're
I think
100% right with that.
Yeah, I think giving some kids some coping skills for what might be expected of them in society,
Right.
and what is okay versus what isn't, is important. But also, they need to be allowed to be and to find their path and what is good for them and be able to be creative. So back on supplements, because this also helps. Sometimes parents are afraid to give supplements because they're afraid their child will lose that. Because most children on the spectrum, they really do have some amount of gifted in something.
Yes.
And you may not always know what it is, and maybe they don't always figure it out, but often they really do, and they're naturally doing it, and you may not notice that as being gifted.
Right.
And it's not that it's the stigma of they should be gifted. They just are. And if you're paying attention to what it is they are naturally doing, you'll kind of figure that out, and that will be their happy place. And that will be their safe place, and the thing that they do when they are feeling stressed, and the thing that they enjoy doing most throughout their life. And that is a thing you should certainly give as a gift to your children to pay attention and cultivate, I think.
Yes.
So
Is Prince Wiggles artistic like you?
he is more artistic than me.
Is he? Okay.
He is the most creative child that I think I've ever met, and he's the best builder. We had him going to this play place a lot, and they had all of these magnetic building tiles, and he was at 3 and 4 building cathedrals.
Wow.
Out of them, and all of the parents would stop. I'm serious. And the people working there would often stop and just watch him do this and building these things. He was building, at one point he built the clock tower from Daniel Tiger. Like, he would build things that he had maybe seen somewhere in a picture, and he was building it out of memory with these little tiles. And they would be bigger than him, and he'd have to stand on a chair, which was generally against the rules, but they kind of let him get away with it because
Right.
they wanted to see what was going to happen.
Right. I can see that happening.
You know, and I have pictures of that where it's just like, wow. But then sometimes he would have a lot of frustrations because physics didn't work the way he wanted it to.
Okay.
Or if it fell, then there would be a meltdown. Now that doesn't happen. We worked a lot on being able to understand, well, you can rebuild it and it'll be okay. And remember to put a support structure in. Can you imagine teaching a 3-year-old about support beams?
No kidding. Does some of that have to do then with his just getting older, do you think? I mean, obviously, you know, you've made a very clear point about you've done a lot of work with him on just being himself.
Growing out of the meltdowns was very much not about getting older.
Okay.
It was the 5-HTP.
So you're going to
sure.
go back to the nutrition with
Yeah,
Okay.
The 5-HTP and cutting out the wheat. You can still have carbs without wheat.
Yes, correct.
There are totally good carbs. What are some good carbs that
Offhand, you know, I'm somebody who doesn't pay attention to any of that. So most of the time, what I tell people is potatoes and rice.
I was going to say I like a potato.
Yeah.
Personally.
Like, I can eat anything personally. So.
Yeah. So
I think. I don't
You
know.
think?
Now,
Well,
now that
that's
you're
the
saying
thing.
this stuff, it's like, whoa, maybe, you know.
Yeah.
And again, when we were kids, this information, one reason my curiosity is really piqued with this is because a lot of the things that you're talking about are foreign to me.
yeah.
They just are, because, again, we didn't have access to the information that you've had access to, you know, 35 years ago.
We didn't, like, with some of the people in my family, we did not have some of this
Yeah.
information. And so had we known, we would have done things differently. I had a nephew that was on the Ritalin, and he permanently has a tic, like a facial tic.
I have
Which
one
is-
of those.
And he's so great, and he's so brilliant, and the idea, I cannot imagine that child really needing to be on ADHD medication. He's a lot like my little boy. I mean, sure, he was a little hyperactive, but he was brilliant, and he was sweet, and he was cute, and the school forced that on them.
Yeah.
Because they were very big on doing that.
Well,
at
you
the
know,
time.
pharma, this is actually on the last show, my guest Ksenia we talked about pharma, and I brought this point up that they get kickbacks.
Yes, they do.
And then it started in the 90s, the late 90s, when Prozac came out with the antidepressants and stuff. So for each one of the students, pharma's giving the schools and
the doctors.
Yeah, and the doctors and everybody's getting kickbacks with this.
And the foster care system.
Ooh, that's another aspect.
We've known this for a long time, actually. John Stossel, I think.
I remember him from 2020.
Yeah, he did a segment on that and
Really?
how much medication children were on that were in the foster care system. It was more than double.
What they should be on?
It was more than double what an average child it takes.
Okay.
And some of it was more than an adult, and some of it was so much that it was beyond the adult, the maximum that an adult could have.
Right.
And they were giving this to little children.
Like the recommended daily allowance or whatever?
They don't have an advocate, you know? They have foster parents, and some of the foster parents are great, but some of them were getting kickbacks.
Right.
For doing this, and so they take in a bunch of kids and get a check every month for having the kids on
wow,
more drugs. And so, yeah, you can with supplementing Wiggles, it really helped him a lot to not have the meltdowns that he was having before, but also the wheat. And think about this with some adults that might have ADHD. Beer,
wheat. Wow.
So anybody
Amazing.
that you know that maybe has a pretty bad problem with drinking or is very angry and ragey when they drink, because me, if I drink, I'm the happiest drunk in the world. But other
I can
people,
attest to that, actually.
Yeah. I really am. I'm super bubbly. But with somebody on the spectrum, it's very possible that that's why they get fighty, and that's why they're angry, and that's why you're mad at them, or that's why they've acted out and behaved in all of these ways. It's called protest behavior. And
that seems fitting.
Yeah.
Actually.
And why they are just not functioning like they normally do when they are not on it. Well, beer is full of wheat.
That's amazing.
Yeah, things like a lot of alcohol has wheat in it, especially your Wells, and things like whiskey was not originally made with wheat, but your well whiskey is full of wheat.
Wow.
And so if you think about,
that explains for me personally a lot. Like I told you, I've completely given drinking up.
Yeah, you were telling me that.
And you're talking about these things, and it's like I'm going through my 20s when I was just, and we all go through that. Some of us a little worse than others, but I was a raging drinker, raging drunk, alcoholic, if you will. You can say whatever you want, whatever term you want to use. I was that. And now that you're saying this, it's like, because like I said, like me personally, I can eat anything. Like I notice the things that don't make me feel good when I eat, so I try to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah.
But it makes a lot of sense of a lot of behaviors that I had when I was drunk.
Yeah.
During those times.
And so you might actually have a little bit of a wheat intolerance. Now let's think about vaccines for a second. Vaccines have wheat.
Amongst other things.
But I don't disagree with vaccines. I'm not an anti-vax person. I am anti-adding all of the additives, because you can totally have vaccines without the additives. Correct. And in fact, I looked out because when Wiggles was a baby, they did have that for a brief period of time. They had just gotten rid of all of the mercury. They decided, let's take all of the additives out of the vaccines, and
aluminum, mercury,
all of it. And none of that was in the vaccines during that period of time. And then now they are putting certain things back in, especially eggs and wheat. And
wow.
For a lot of children, that's not necessarily bad. What I'm telling you is that the vaccines are not causing autism, but you're seeing the symptoms more than you did before because you've just taken wheat and put it directly into their bloodstream.
Correct.
And so it is definitely going to bring that out where you can see it more. So they already had it, you just didn't know it.
Right. So in turn, and I've actually heard something similar to this. It wasn't about so much the wheat, but I have a very, very good friend
Aluminum and mercury are not good for
Yeah,
you.
no, not at all, especially injected directly into your bloodstream. So the wheat being in them then is the root cause of children's autism being pushed to the forefront. Is that an accurate way of saying that?
It's very likely that with some children that is the case.
Okay.
And so some studies say definitely yes.
Okay.
And so it is very likely that that is what's going on, is that they are getting wheat, and then it's exacerbating symptoms.
That's better put than the way I said it. So what do you think then is a resolution with, because I mean obviously like there's the whole thing with the vaccines are doing this and there's all this stuff, but I mean obviously there's certain vaccines that are necessary. We know this for babies and stuff. Like there are certain ones that do need to be. My friend told me there's 3 for sure that are necessary. I don't know them off the top of my head, but what do you think is a good resolution to try to combat this problem that we're having?
Well, they need to take the additives back out.
Okay.
And the thing is too, if we were regulated differently, if you had options, instead of Big Pharma being able to tell you, instead of the FDA being able to tell you, and a lot of people might disagree with this, but which things you're allowed to have, well, perhaps you could order a vaccine from, say, Canada that didn't have that.
Right.
But currently, we do not have that option. We do not have the option of being able to get a vaccine from another source. They're all regulated through singular sources.
Right.
And so you are just stuck with, you have to then make that choice. Do I want all of these additives in my baby, and which can be potentially toxic to them, or do I want to risk having these other things that are potentially life-threatening? And so that's not a decision we should have to make when they could very easily make it without it.
Right. Do you think that falls back to the whole concept of pharma getting paid and people getting kickbacks, and so the corruption of the pharmaceutical industry?
Yeah, well, and then they pay lobbyists and they pay publicists to make it so that people are going to be very polarized, and you're either anti-vax or you're very pro-vax, and you can't argue with the pharmaceutical industry because you have to be pro-vax, right?
Right.
Well, can't we argue with them and still be pro-vaccination? Can't we argue with them and say, take this stuff out? So they've paid publicists and they've paid lobbyists and stuff like that to be able to do what they're doing and keep this stuff in. And there are benefits to that. They make more money by putting the things in. You'd think, well, if we put less things in, we should make more money because that's less stuff we have to pay to put in. But it actually doesn't work that way with the way we run things like corporate welfare and with the way that kickbacks happen.
Right.
And so they actually do make more money by having them in.
Well, it's that kind of immediately made me think when you said that, like diesel fuel versus unleaded fuel. Diesel fuel is one process less than unleaded fuel in the refinement process.
Yeah, and yet it's cheaper.
And it costs, but diesel fuel costs more than unleaded.
Yeah.
That just made me think that. I know it's unrelated, but that kind of goes along the same concept. So do you think, or do you feel, or do you have direct evidence of? And I mean, obviously, we know that it's a big money issue.
It is all about big money. I'm trying not to get too political, and we'll go back to some supplements here in a sec. The libertarian candidate running right now, Jo Jorgensen.
The one that's running for president.
Yeah, she's running for president. She has talked a lot about how even the COVID crisis was mishandled because we should have been able to have things like mass testing.
Right.
We should have been able to have mass tests on the market, but it costs over $1 billion to put a test on the market. Just through the FDA.
Right.
Right? And so we didn't have mass testing. And we could have and we should have. A lot of that system is very corrupt. It just is.
It is, you're right.
And they have the medical industry and the big pharma industry together. And that isn't to say that pharmaceuticals are all bad. And it isn't to say that the medical industry is all bad. But some of the people that are making policy are terrible.
Right. Well, it's the old guard still.
Yeah, it is.
These decision makers that have been in the industry and been in with these companies
Yeah.
for 20, 30 years.
Yeah, well, and a lot of them have a lot of vested interest for having things be a certain
Yes.
way. And so they are making so much money being sure that there isn't more options on the market.
Right.
And if we were able to have more options on the market, then they would make a lot less money.
So if they spend as much money on having more options as they did as to not having more options, wouldn't they make more money still, maybe?
No.
No? Okay, I'm just asking
But
because it
you-
seems to me.
You'd think that they should. You think that they should, but actually they don't, because they're still getting things like government subsidy
Right.
for not.
I see, okay.
And so somebody somewhere has a vested interest in keeping a market small,
Of course.
and yet keeping spending big. And so that really is problematic. We should be able to, you think the FDA is there to help you, right? We should be able to have options, because here's the FDA and they're supposed to help you. And then yet, what were we talking about earlier? It's okay for them to give children illegal drugs and call it legal. That is not them helping you and keeping you safe and regulating your drugs for you. That is them just deciding who's going to win and lose, and that's them deciding who gets to make money versus who doesn't.
Right.
Yeah, so it might be marketed as being there to help you, but you can go ahead and sue somebody if they sell you a drug that is mislabeled.
Right.
Many people would, and then that company would have a lot of problems, especially if we removed restrictions from being able to sue them.
Right.
Which we added those in with the ADA.
So do you feel strongly that people should have more of a way to be actionable against the pharmaceutical companies?
Absolutely. We took away a lot of our ability to do that when we put the ADA into place, and that's unfortunate. I was somewhat for it at the beginning, thinking, well, I want poor people to have health care, and I'd rather spend that tax money on health care than war if we're going to pay taxes, I guess.
Right.
But then when he's saying, well, we're not going to tell you what's in the bill till you vote on it, that's a big indicator that you should say no.
Right. Well, a lot of bills too, and I'm sure you know this, like, you're pretty savvy when it comes to the political stuff. A lot of these bills that these senators and congresspeople are propagating are full of earmarks.
Yes.
And so they're, I've always liked the phrase, I believe it was Max Kaiser. He's like an analyst guy, or was it Max Kaiser? Or it was one of those guys, Webster Tarpley or Max Kaiser. Gerald Celente. That's who it was. Gerald Celente, he's one of these trend forecaster people. He's been around for a very, very long time. And he made one of the greatest analogies I've ever heard about the congressmen and the senators. And he's like, it's like pro wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Like in pro wrestling, Triple H and The Undertaker are two pretty well-known wrestlers. On the TV, they're feuding and they hate each other and they're going to kill each other, and I'm going to hit them with a sledgehammer and a steel chair and choke slam them through the cage, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then when they're not on the camera behind the stage, they're, it's Paul and Mark and they're friends, and they travel together, their kids play together, their wives know each other, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he made this analogy one time about, politics is Hollywood for ugly people, and how they're doing the literal same thing that pro wrestlers are doing, being on the TV against each other. But then when the doors are closed and the cameras are off, they're shaking hands and having dinner and making deals and pushing forward these legislation bills that are really only helping each other to pad their pockets, essentially. We've
seen that in news quite a bit over time, and yet people for some reason don't want to believe that. And we've seen it in even movies and stuff. It used to be something we were very aware of, is that sometimes politicians are corrupt and you shouldn't trust them. How is it we've become a society that starts backing them as if they're their favorite sports team.
Right.
You know, and they can do no wrong, and the other guy is probably, he's definitely a rapist, and I'm sure he's a murderer, and we will all die
Right.
if you vote for him.
Baseless claims. Baseless accusations. Oftentimes.
I mean, I think that there are a lot of accusations that definitely go around that are probably accurate depending on which politician we're talking about, because
Yes.
for surely it is definitely an arena that gets a lot of narcissists attracted to it.
That's a very good statement, yes.
Yeah, and so they're going to be very disreputable people often. That doesn't mean they all are,
Right.
but most of the time. And if you find yourself feeling very passionately and strongly that if you don't vote for this person, everyone is going to die, it's a good possibility that the guy you're backing is corrupt.
That's crazy. I like how you
Yeah.
said that. I like how you put that. It's pretty astute of an observation because, well, and again, you just nailed it too with your statement of, I don't know how people don't understand this, because and I say this almost every day. It's like two people watch the same exact thing,
Yeah.
right? And then report completely different scenarios about it. You know, it's kind of like we've been laughing about, one like one of the CNN reporters is in Wisconsin the other day.
Oh boy, yeah.
And he's on the camera talking, right? And it says a little fiery, but mostly peaceful. And behind him is a fucking inferno. I mean, dude, we're talking like 30-foot flames, maybe. And I might be exaggerating the height of the flames, so,
Well,
we want to be as accurate as possible. And I'm not a doctor. But you can't unsee what we're watching. And how the fuck are 30-foot flames behind the guy in any
Mostly
way, shape, or
peaceful.
form mostly peaceful? I'm just saying. Like, fortunately for us, we live in Boise, Idaho, and from what I've gathered and what I've seen, I saw the thing where Joseph Evans, whom we both know,
Yeah.
was at one of the things, and somebody had tried to attack them or something. I wasn't there, so I don't know what happened. I just got his accounting of it. And not saying he's not telling the truth, and that's not what happened, but I didn't see it, so I can't remark on it either way. But for the most part, what I've seen around here is everybody's been pretty good.
Mostly, I mean,
Yeah.
mostly they've just yelled stuff at each other.
Right, which
And there were
that's-
some skirmishes,
Yeah.
but mostly, and at that, a lot of the problems that we had were there are some people that are not just from out of state, and I'm not just saying they're paid actors. There's some people that feel very passionately about this stuff,
Right.
that are touring around from town to town, riling things up for whatever reason. I think mostly because they're dicks.
That's probably a pretty accurate commentary. about that.
Maybe a person here or there is paid, perhaps. Maybe somebody did take a pallet full of bricks and just sort of drop it over there for people to find. I don't discount that at all. Anything that is possible is probably happening. It's probably not just one story. It's probably
Right.
many things happening, and the news media just likes to polarize things, and then the polarized people like to go, yeah, that's exactly it, when reality tends to be a lot more prismatic, doesn't it? There's,
I would tend to agree with that, actually.
they,
Like I said, it's like a lot of the stuff, and like you even said too, like we've kind of both, encompassed this idea that a lot of the information being propagated by whoever's getting paid the most,
Yeah.
if you will, the pharmaceutical stuff, the stuff with the children, the vaccines, and these I like to call them gifts, the spectrum stuff and the ADD stuff. There, and we've both have experience with it and seen this from a different angle, and then you're watching this stuff and it's like, what the fuck are you people talking about? You know what I mean? Like it's right in front of people, and yet they don't want to accept what it is.
Well, and a lot of people would rather go with a polarized knee-jerk reaction and will not wait for facts.
Right.
We still don't know what happened in any Wisconsin case at all.
No, we don't.
Not any of them. We have some videos leading up. We have some documents. And so we have some stronger ideas than we started, and they don't necessarily agree with the initial narrative.
Correct.
And so, but you say that, and you're a murderer.
Right.
Just so you know,
Yeah,
you're a murderer,
totally.
and
Or
you
you're
deserve
racist.
to die, or you're a racist.
Totally.
And
Or
that's,
you're a misogynist.
yeah, and that's, yeah, right. You know, I've actually been called that a time or two online.
You
and
have, really?
Yeah, every now and then, I mean, depending on my profile picture, they might have only paid attention to my words. And with the cocktail party especially, they didn't realize the person operating the page was a woman. And so they would
I see.
often call me things like that. And I'm like, okay, number one, where in what I wrote here has anything whatsoever to do with anybody's gender? Because I am
Right.
not a person that cares and about somebody's gender, you know, or whatever one they choose to be a part of or identify with. Good for you.
Yeah, totally. Are you a good person or not?
Yeah, and what are the facts? I'm talking about facts here. How does that have to do with that?
I understand what you're saying.
And so, yeah, no, I definitely got called that. And I'm so middle of the road that I never know which side is going to be yelling at me. Because about the facts that I've presented, she's like, me too. And
One thing I can tell you about this is, and I've literally witnessed it, and so now I have a very good point to draw from.
yeah,
I said to somebody, I said, "Did you even read what I wrote in
No.
the post?" And they went, "You got me. I didn't. I just looked at the picture that you posted."
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, I clearly laid it out what I'm saying in what I wrote." Like,
Yeah.
I think I'm a pretty decent writer. I take a lot of time most of the time before I write stuff. I comment a lot, and you read what I comment.
yeah,
Whether I'm trying to be funny, it's very apparent if I'm being sarcastic because
Yeah.
I make sure the laughing faces are on there. And again, we've had enough conversations where you can probably be like, "That fucker."
Yeah.
But a lot of times when I'm being really serious or trying to make a point, I clearly and succinctly say it.
yeah.
And I've caught people that aren't reading what I'm doing.
They read the headline or looked at the picture
Correct.
or the first sentence and then
Correct.
read nothing further.
Exactly.
And I've called people on this online quite a bit, especially lately because we're heading into that season.
Yes.
Where I'm like, you didn't. I don't want to put you down here, but you're screeching at this person, and you didn't even read all of what they said because they're clearly saying right here that
What they
they're-
mean.
Yeah, and that they are also open to other ideas. If you have additional information, tell me. Let me know if I am wrong. I have seen people saying that and becoming more centrist and open-minded and saying, and I've seen you do that and then be yelled at. Where,
Yeah.
And
I do.
And then I think I had even made a comment on one of your posts where I was saying something about Melania and Michelle, where
Yeah, that was funny.
and
I got a lot of heat for that one.
Oh, so did I. And
Yes, you did. I know which one you're talking about too.
and so there were a lot of people bashing on either side, but I'm like, more power to these women.
Right.
If that the thing that you were saying they did is what they are doing, well, good for them then.
Right.
Like, they're good at it.
Well,
and what we should care about is the policies of their husbands and how that
Correct.
is affecting our lives.
Correct.
Not whether or not we are shaming the women here.
Right.
Because that doesn't have anything to do with anything. And I was nice about it, and I said something polite and direct, and I didn't yell at anyone, and yet I had people yelling at me.
Yeah, I remember that too. I don't remember exactly what you said, but I remember you got attacked by a couple different people.
Yeah.
And it was just like, well, and the thing too, like, some of that stuff I'm just poking bears.
Yeah.
Like I told you, I remember typing that to you too, and I said, Ginger, I'm really just poking fun.
Yeah.
And some of these people were just going way
Well,
overboard.
and
with
I
it.
made sure to say that, I definitely know that because I did. And I wanted people to get that clearly your initial post was you just playing around, and some people got real serious, and some people got really mean.
Yeah.
And not just at you, but at these women. And I'm like, we don't need to lynch them.
Right. Well, the big one was, Melania's been doing porn in Russia and all this. So I actually, somebody said that, and I was like, well, and of course, like, this is me saying it. She did porn in Russia? You got to send me some links because I need to do some research. Like, you know what I mean?
It's for science.
Yeah, it's just total only for science. That's it's a scientific endeavor. But
it's you were saying the same thing. You were mirroring what I'm mirroring. Is like so neat.
Right. Like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, I just think it's funny. You know what I mean? Like, I've gone a little. I'll even say this out loud. I've gotten. I won't even say overboard, but the whole like Michelle being a man. Michael, because I mean, dude, just.
Well, you were joking, but everybody else in the thread was not joking.
I'm totally serious about that.
Oh,
actually.
okay. Well, you're totally serious.
I'm 100% serious that Michelle Obama is really a dude named Michael.
She could be a dude named Michael.
100% serious.
If she's a drag queen, she's fabulous.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that's exactly what I said, too. If she's a drag queen, she's fabulous. Good for her.
See, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. My whole issue with the thing is this. Point blank and simple. I had to explain this to somebody the other day. It's the deception.
Perhaps.
That's it. That's my issue with it. And that's my issue.
I would have been so down with having a trans first lady.
That's fine.
Cool.
That's totally fine. You know what I mean? Like, see, some people have taken it to that point of the whatever phobic word that they want to use for the day. And to me, it's just like, how is that? Like, no one's saying that it's wrong to do that. People can do whatever the fuck they want. Let's just level. We know mutually a lot of people. I remember we took a photo one time at the Liquid, and I have it on my phone. And I'm not sure who that person was. They had very white face and lipstick, very androgynous. It's a friend of yours.
I know a lot of people that look like that.
Yeah, but
I mean, and in fact, a lot of goth people are androgynous
very much
or
so.
Trans or bisexual or poly or pan, and so you just be you.
Right.
And so I'm like, that's a lot of people, man.
But I bring that up. I bring that up because it's very interesting to me how in an environment like that, like, and again, like, I'm totally comfortable there. Hey, let's take a picture. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't even know that person. You knew the person. You were talking to whoever it was, and he or she. Because again, it was very hard for me to tell. But like the whole thing, it was like I threw my arm around this person. You know what I mean? And we took a selfie, and it was like put it on Instagram, and it was like totally cool. So when people want to start this attacks with their phobic words, it really baffles my mind because it's like I read a post today that says this. People that can spend all day online and then have private lives that you know nothing about.
Yeah.
I really thought that was pretty poignant because it's like again, there's a lot, like for instance, there's a lot of stuff, you know this being in the music industry and this thing. That's how we get stuff out. Is online, is the social media.
You have to be on social media a lot in order to market.
Right.
And sometimes, and people are aware of this, but it is also fun because I'd rather the world be a lot more fun than it is. Sometimes to market, you will, so people are still following you and pay attention, you will do a lot of things that are fun posts and things like that. But you do have to spend a lot of time on social media, more than I would like. When I first started as a promoter, you would normally promote by, putting flyers out and hanging out in coffee shops and going to parties where you met other people that would come to your party. And, about a decade ago...
Remember doing the small flyers?
Yeah.
And then the big flyers?
Yeah, and you'd staple them into a telephone pole and all of that.
Tape them to the electric box outside of the record exchange.
Yeah. Well, and part of why that doesn't happen anymore is a company moved in and they made it so that they worked deals with most of downtown where only they can put flyers and only they can put posters and you have to pay them. And I'm just never a fan of a monopoly on anything. I don't even like being a monopoly on my markets. I like other people. And, healthy competition is good for you.
Yes, agreed.
Toxic competition, probably not, but sometimes even that can be good for you. But
agreed.
Yeah.
That's a really good point that you bring up. So kind of switching gears a little bit,
Yeah, we were talking about ADHD stuff, and we got
Yeah, we were.
way here.
Well, and that's okay. That's like I told you. It's very freeform. You know, I
Yeah.
kind of have like kind of just things I'd like to talk about with people.
Yeah.
And then just wherever we go. So we're kind of circling back to the music thing. So I like the fact that you just said toxic competition. What do you consider toxic competition when it comes to like promoting and music and?
Well, probably the same thing with social media. If you are threatening to kill each other, it's probably a bad time.
Right.
You know, if you are doing things to sabotage one another and you are intentionally causing harm and being malicious, that's pretty toxic. If instead you're running a healthy competition where, like I might do with another promoter, where we have a race to see who can get the most people, like the most numbers at our particular event, and whoever loses, like we'll have a bet, and whoever loses has to do the embarrassing thing,
Yeah.
or whoever wins has to buy the booze. That's pretty healthy.
That's healthy. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fun. Or maybe that isn't your best buddy over there. Maybe you don't like each other, but what does keep it healthy is that both of you are promoting a similar music scene, and there are multiple nights for it instead of everybody trying to pile on to one evening, which I've seen happen in a lot of cities. And maybe you never say a bad word about each other, but the fact that you're both running a thing means that there's more people to go around.
Right.
And you can maybe go hand out flyers at each other's nights.
Right.
You know?
Well, and work together and help each other to get crowds.
Yeah.
Right?
And so, yeah, you might do that. You might be able to network with this person that you personally can't stand.
So, passing out flyers at other people's events is a really good way, right, to help promote other people as well as yourself.
Yeah, well, if you care about the scene more than you care about your ego,
Right.
whether you like a bunch of people or not, you're still going to extend that courtesy as long as they're coming to your event and being polite.
Right.
And as long as they're not doing terrible things to you on the outside, you can not like people all day and still work with them, or
Right.
still let them be over there, you know?
Right. Well, that's
Yeah.
funny you mentioned that. There's been a lot of I'd say, toxic relationships in our town over the years with promoting. I'm sure you know some of the things and places and people I'm talking about.
Yeah, there has
here locally.
I see that everywhere. In like every city that I've ever done events in, and some have been nicer to me because as much as I am celebrated here, you're not really a hero in your hometown. So I'm actually better known outside of here.
Right.
And my reputation's even slightly better other places. So, or at least people respect me more.
Why do you think that is?
And people do respect me here, so don't get me wrong, for the most part. Why do I think that is?
I know what you're saying though. Like it's kind of that thing of like in your hometown, like nobody gives a shit, but then you go elsewhere and it's like people love what you're doing.
Well,
why do you
I
think
think
that
it's
is?
partially because sometimes familiarity can breed contempt with contemptuous people. With people that like to bond, it sure doesn't.
Right.
You know, but I think there is some level of that. There gets to be jealousy. So if this is your buddy and you've both been working towards a goal and they see you rising, and I see that even sometimes with my partner, he's in comedy and he's getting to be more and more famous now.
Well, because he's funny.
He is funny.
I've seen him perform. He's
this
funny.
is
He's
part
good.
of why he's my partner. Cause
Yeah.
can you imagine you're laying around after you get laid and you're sitting there and he starts talking to you about all of that stuff and he's just being hilarious? That is the best shit
I'm trying
ever.
to imagine it right now, Ginger. Hold on. Does he still have his beard?
Yeah, right
Okay.
now. I mean, sometimes he's had it, sometimes he
Okay.
hasn't.
Well, I've always known him. I've always been around him when he's had a beard. So that's
Yeah.
how I like to imagine my Emmanuel is with a beard on. And okay, I'm thinking. Nah, I got nothing. But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so you just had like the best sex ever, and now he's being a total goofball, and so you're just still on that like high, and now you're like laying around, joking around, you're having a great time.
Right.
Like, of course you're gonna be with that. He's funny.
Yeah.
He's funnier at home.
I can see that being a thing.
And some comedians are not. Some comedians are kind of not a lot of the ones that I know personally anymore, but I have known some. Some comedians are big jerks off stage, and so especially some really famous ones that I've met, and you meet them backstage, and it's awful. It's like, whoa, let's never talk to you again.
Right. Well, musicians are like that too.
A lot of we're up on stage, and it really is theater, and sometimes you're putting yourself, it is your persona, but sometimes your persona is yourself. And you're putting that out there and amplifying it. Mm-hmm. And some people are putting up the image that they wish everyone else would see, so they can get away with the shitty things they do. And so there really is a big difference. And I was talking with my friend that I brought about that on my way over here, is that people that are famous are sometimes attracted to the fame because it allows them to get away with things, and because it makes for good breeding ground for them, and because it is a good way for them to get a lot of attention. But then other people that are famous, they're doing it because they really love other people, and they like to bond, and they have a good heart and great compassion, and all they really want to do is entertain you.
Right.
And see
they
that you're
happy. They have that genuineness about their art.
Yeah. Or sometimes, sometimes they just really wanted to create good art, and it's not about the fame at all. They just wanted to make good art.
Right. And they happen to get famous.
And so sometimes you'll have the people that were really in it for those ulterior motives, versus the people that weren't, and they'll be rising up with you, and suddenly you're getting famous, and that makes them real mad.
Right.
And so they'll want to, the twos and the threes of the world want to break the number ones down, and instead of rising themselves up.
Right.
And so they'll try to break you down, and they'll be mean to you, and they'll try to defame you, which is a deactivating strategy, and that's a whole other type of spectrum. And that's where you run into things like personality disorder.
Right. Well, it's like we were talking earlier, like that post that I found, and it was just like somebody wrote it on a napkin about the attention that broken people don't want to get fixed because of the attention. I think in entertainment especially, and I think you can very much attest to this, having been around it probably more than I have. Actually, not even probably. You've been around a lot more than I have over the years. And there's a lot of people that are involved in it that are very much just simply seeking the attention.
Yeah, definitely seeking the attention of being toxic at that.
Yeah.
And so I can name bands that I even like, and that sometimes you can definitely relate to that emotion that they're conveying, and that's part of why you like it.
Yeah.
Is because it's your outlet for that feeling instead of you acting out.
Right.
But I can think of some bands, especially in the goth industrial world, that are out there for the attention of being broken and terrible and awful human beings. And I'm sure that many people can. There's a few names that would spring to mind even when you talk to mainstream people. They're like, oh yeah, this band. Then again, there are some bands where they are talking about their damage and brokenness and the act and art of getting better, and the feelings of self-improvement, or the emotions behind these terrible feelings, because they are actually dealing with their feelings.
Right.
And they're being healthy individuals by talking about how this time I was sad. Right. And so there are a lot of people out there that really love the attention of being broken and damaged. And I'm a person that really likes to help. And you have to be careful who you help, because
Agreed.
Some people, I've certainly been in bad places in my life in my past, and some people they want to exploit the same idea and trauma bond with you so that they can stay broken, but you'll help them.
Right.
And some people also just really like the damage that they are so that they can inflict, and they enjoy inflicting damage on other people. Right? And they look for people like me that they think might be a big sucker, and then they get really mad when you're not.
Don't they?
Yeah.
Don't
they
they?
get really mad when you see right through them, and then they're so angry. And it's like, well, just because I'm nice doesn't mean I'm stupid.
Right. Exactly. I've noticed that a lot over the years with performers, and whether it's music or comedy or, sports or, whatever field that entertainers, performers are in. Just in my own experiences, watching that kind of behavior. And that's the kind of thing I don't know how to really put it into words, because I've actually never really talked about this with anybody. That's weird. You know what I mean? Like, I've never actually had like a conversation.
How you've been
like
people
this.
watching?
Yeah, but it's one of those things where like I've seen that in, backstage or wherever we were, and it's like, how have you made anything in this? Because like it's very apparent that these people they're just not good humans.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand how they get people to
subscribe to what they're selling.
Want to associate with them, work with them. I mean, even like in the acting modeling thing, I've worked with a few people where it was like, like, I'm the guy who comes in like, what am I doing? This? Cool. Like, I just want to get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like a super cool job, but I'm like, like, the faster we get this done, the faster I can go home. Like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there's some really difficult people that are like that diva-ish personality, if you will. Like, well, I didn't have organic kale chips and organic salsa from Trader Joe's here today, so until I get that, I'm not doing scenes, and that kind of attitude, Like, there's literally really people like that.
The days of being able to be Aussie and be able to order 100, specifically 100, and no more and no less, brown M&Ms backstage are over. We all
was
have
that
to
Ozzy
work.
with the brown M&Ms?
Yeah.
I thought that was Van Halen.
I thought it was Ozzy.
I don't know. That's like, this is a time when Google would be handy.
Yeah.
Totally. But I get what you're saying, yeah.
I tend to go into the podcast and just correct myself after the fact, because I'll go fact check myself. I do not mind challenging my own ideas. You shouldn't. You should challenge your ideas and not be afraid to look at the other side and see what they're saying. And so I'll go in and I'll fact check myself, and sometimes in a podcast, if I said the wrong thing or the wrong name, I'll be like, nope, it was this.
But what's great is it's totally okay to make a mistake.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. And then be like, oh, my bad, I misspoke. Like, I thought it was this. It's just funny. Like, it's funny that, like, that comes up when we're talking about that. Because I totally, when you said that, I was like, that was Van Halen.
Van Halen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you win. Okay,
Totally.
I owe you some brown M&Ms now.
Yeah, totally. And I didn't, you know what I mean? And, like, when you said that, because I remember reading about that, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that was like... that was Van Halen. Like, when you said that.
No, it's wrong.
Which, and again, like...
Ozzy has a story.
Was it the one where he snorted a spider?
No.
Or,
I mean, he has a lot of stories,
he has a lot
but
of
he has
stories.
a story about demanding certain things for
Yeah, you're right,
backstage
he
list.
does.
And the days of doing that as an artist and a performer
They're
are
over.
really over. You can have a writer, but it's going to have to be reasonable, or they're going to dock your pay.
Right.
They are.
Right.
Or they're not going to want to work with you.
Right.
You must be worth what the performance is, and you must be able to pull the numbers to make it worth dealing with you.
Yeah.
And if you cannot do that, you should at least be pleasant to work with.
Right.
And oh my gosh, if you're both, people will book you again
Every
and again
time.
and again.
Every time.
Every time. And I've made a whole career of that, and I teach people that we bring, so we bring a lot of artists along with us on the road when we go, and I teach them that you are here representing us, and you need to be nice, and you need to be fun, and that doesn't mean be a doormat, have boundaries.
Yeah.
But make sure that you go out there and get us asked back. Be especially good to the promoter.
Always.
And because a lot of people are really shitty to promoters and nice to
Sound
the
guys.
crowd and the sound guy.
Sound guys, stagehands.
And these are the people that get you back.
Yes, bartenders.
Bartenders.
Servers, cocktail waitresses.
If they don't want to work with you,
Yeah.
they are going to tell your promoter,
Yep.
and then your promoter is not going to book you because...
That's very true.
Yeah, so you need to do what you need to do to be asked back within the reason of healthy boundaries. I'm not looking to anybody having a casting couch. In fact, that's really a bad idea for getting booked again.
Usually it is.
It usually is. So, I mean, not in Hollywood, I suppose, but in the music industry, it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
And so you want to be good to work with, and you want to be easy to deal with in general, especially in your hometown. You don't want to be gossipy. You don't want to be rude. You don't
Right.
want to be going around making everybody uncomfortable. And that's even when you're not performing. If you're in your hometown, you especially need to be awesome when people see you out in the world, because they will remember and decide whether or not they're going to your show.
That's true.
Which might go with that no man is a hero in their hometown, because when you're fresh and brand new, when you show up somewhere else, all they know of you is what they have seen
Right.
online or how you've been promoted. And so they didn't see you on that one bad day, or they weren't friends with your ex.
Right.
to know.
Do you think that plays
Yeah.
a large role in people's success, is the fact that, like, getting out of their hometown?
Yes, absolutely. You need to get out of your hometown. You need to go out on the road and experience life for one thing, but you definitely need to be picky about the tours that you take. You don't ever want to take one that is going to be losing you money.
Right.
Not all shows are worth it. So me personally, I have a little boy. I can't be touring all the time. And one thing I learned too, because I was on tour for a number of years, is I didn't want to be touring all the time. That does wear you out. So instead, I would book 3 or 4 festivals to go to a year.
Okay.
And I would go perform those, and I would meet everybody, and it would get me a lot more notoriety, and it would make it so a lot more people were exposed to my thing, because the people at the festival came from all of these other cities. If I
Right.
just went on tour as just myself, I would have had to hit all of these cities when I can go play one festival.
One place and get all those cities
And all
at the place.
Yeah, and festivals are becoming really the way to do promotion anyway. We used to have a lot more attendance at things like weekly nights and clubs that were 24/7, the Metal Club or whatever. But that isn't the world we live in anymore.
Not any longer, you're right.
And so people like going to festivals because people are working many jobs, and because people have a lot of lives, and people are also just sitting on Facebook
Yes, correct.
and not going out for their social time like maybe they should. Go out. Instead of sitting on Facebook, go out
Like
and
we
be in
used to.
reality. Yeah. Go to coffee shops. You don't necessarily have to get drunk in the bar, although maybe you could. Go out dancing. For hell's sake, go be part of the world. But anymore, people aren't really doing that. And so it is a really good idea if you are somebody that is a new performer, and this applies to other industries, that you might want to get on something that's more of a festival or something that's a big show and go do a few big shows a year.
Right.
And then you have all of this time to develop your act in between to make it good.
I get it. That makes sense.
Yeah, and so you want to develop it and bring out like the really huge bang, and that way you're not starving on the road, because that does happen. You have a
Yes, it
home
does.
somewhere. You can pay your rent. You're not just doing all of these shows just to fulfill your dream. You can fulfill your dream if, let's say, you're even an opening act at this festival. You still got all of this exposure and pay.
Right.
And
And you can sell merchandise.
you can sell a lot. People come
Network.
expecting to spend money.
Yes.
instead of scraping together their change to go to whatever Saturday show.
Right.
You know, they're coming expecting to spend money, so you really can sell all of your stuff, and you should. And merch is fun, man. You gotta, like, with Lithium Dolls, our merch, sometimes we have, like, little dolls that we found at, like, yard sales and stuff that maybe got mangled, and then we take, like, tulle and we put fluffy skirts on them, and we draw, like, calf boots and stripy socks, and we put streaks in their hair, and we goth them out like crazy, and then we turn around and sell that.
Very cool.
Yeah, so
You can be very creative with merchandise.
you can, you should be. I see a lot of people in various industries doing things like just a CD and a T-shirt. Why not? My partner sells his art, and he makes a lot of art. So after his comedy show, here's my art prints, and people buy them.
Very cool.
And so there is that.
That reminds me of Tony Bennett, the singer.
Yeah.
I saw him in Vegas as a teenager with my family, and during his performance, I think he played at Caesars, or it was one of the real nice ones, but this is like 95 or so.
Yeah.
He had his paintings in the backdrop while he was performing. That reminded me exactly of that. That's really cool.
Yeah, so these are things that you can and should do, and I bet he sold a lot of paintings doing it that way, you know.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of, like, even TV stars that did that sold their art.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of a couple that, all those clown paintings, who did those?
John Wayne Gacy.
No.
Oh, sorry. Or the guys in Acid Bath, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the clown paintings was like, a famous actor, and he sold all of these clown paintings. She's gonna look it up for us. And that's a good thing, because so there's a lot of people that are really well known doing that. And if your merch is cool, like for one of the bands on my label, for Pixel Pussy, right?
That's their name, Pixel Pussy?
Yeah,
That's
we
a great
sold
name.
cat toys.
Nice.
Right?
Nice.
And then we put their sticker on it.
That's really cool.
And that's what you should do. And you know what? People liked their Pixel Pussy cat toys. They took them home and played with them.
I bet they did.
Yeah.
Can I get one? I'll take it home and play with it.
I'll make you a Pixel Pussy
that'd be
cat
awesome.
toy. And so, and sometimes that's some of the fun, is making your merch, not just selling, like, oh, we gotta order these T-shirts. Like, make your merch. You can even make your own T-shirt. Sit and paint it, and let people know you made it, and they'll buy it.
What's some advice you would give to the younger generation? Isn't this fun now? We get to, like, give advice to the younger generation. 40 is a great thing, right?
Yeah.
What sort of advice would you give to the younger generation about trying to be performers, be on stage, play music, whatever it is they're doing, whether they're doing, you know, the festivities that happen in the goth world, or comedy, or music? What kind of advice would you give, having done everything that you've done over your career, to these people?
Number one, get a job. And number two, be sure your job is flexible. Because we are no longer living in an age where the record label, you can just live off of them. And in fact, in some ways, we never were. Madonna didn't own that house. She might have been worth all of that money. Prince went off all about this. You're the slave to the label. You don't own shit.
Yep.
And so being on a big label is not necessarily a good thing. Go ahead and be indie. Go ahead and be on a small label. You'll probably make more money. I mean, didn't the guys from Korn, they had to split 10% between them?
Really?
Something like, yeah.
That sounds probably about right.
And so just because you're super famous doesn't mean you're super rich, and just because they're letting you drive this fancy car, well, the label owned that.
Right.
You don't own that. And so you will need a job that supports you, but you will also need a job where if an opportunity comes up, you can say yes.
Right.
That you can take the time off, and you can say yes, and you can go do this big, cool show. And maybe not just any show, like I was saying. People that tour around a lot often end up living in their vehicles. They're singing for their supper, man, and they maybe make it look good, but they are often not financially doing great.
Right.
And so and I toured around a lot and I did okay, but that's because I could go maybe to another city and also the same day with some of the same people that might be at the show book massages, and they'd come and get massaged,
Right.
you know, and then and that made for a long work day. So I'd do the massage and then I'd go have show day. You know, or I'd be doing waxing for people that were then going to the show.
I'll never forget that time you made that Instagram post about Brazilian waxing, as a side note.
Oh, I've made many, though I don't know
Yeah.
which one, but
There was one specific, it was really funny.
my promotion is really funny, and it should be, and it's effective.
Right.
So it's always things like a Yeti, and it'll say, you might need a wax. Yeah, it gets more vulgar from there at times.
Yes, the Brazilian wax one was pretty vulgar, but it was funny.
It's funny.
I still remember it, so you did
You
a good
still
job.
remember.
Yeah.
So if you're going to get a wax, you're calling me.
You're
So-
right. If I'm ever in need of one of those, which I don't know why on earth I would be, but you never know. I got a manicure for the first time last week
Oh, yeah.
for that commerul. Yeah.
Yeah, because you were a hand model.
Yeah.
And so
That's my new line anymore, Ginger. Somebody says something, I'm like, I'm a hand model.
the first thing you need to do is, to be the hand model. My nails aren't even done.
Yeah, it's okay.
So the first thing that you need to do is get a job and get one that's flexible, and so that you can indeed support yourself. And then maybe sometimes these bigger shows are paying you well. So you're actually making money as an artist and you're ahead of the game instead of living in your freaking car.
Right.
It sounds good to live full time doing music or performing or whatever it is you're doing, except that unless that is sustaining itself and paying well while you're trying to make your dream happen, you're probably diminishing your returns instead.
Understood, yeah.
So there is something to be said for earning your place and for doing the hard work and being able to build up, but do it smart. Don't just go out there and let the rest of your life be in shambles and ruin and never really be in a good, stable relationship with anybody because you're on the road. All those one-night stands sound great, and sometimes they are for about the first month. But someday you're going to want somebody to go home to.
Right.
And someday you're going to want to feel attached and bonded, and not just in a romantic relationship, but have friends for real.
Well, and feel normal.
And feel normal
Yeah.
a little bit and have some stability for health's sake. And so it sounds nice living that rock star dream, but it's not reality.
No.
And
it's a lot of work, too.
It's a lot of
work. A lot
work.
of people don't realize the amount of work that goes into a production.
Mm-hmm. It is a lot of work. You're also, in the younger generations, you're going to need to practice a lot.
Get good at your instruments.
Get good at your instruments. Don't expect to be discovered. Don't expect to go on that TV show and get found, because trust me, you probably don't want to get found in that way, because going back to the record label, that is a big marketing scheme for the record label, and
Yep.
some of those people that have won had to go on tour for the next few years on contract, and their lives were ruined, and it sucked for them. And some people turned it around into something great, but many of them did not. And so don't go looking for that. Go looking to get good at what you do. Go expecting to work hard. Go expecting to work very smart. Don't let your whole life be ruined just to make your dream happen. You can make your dream happen. You can go and perform, and you can still have a good, steady, stable life where you do well. And I think sometimes some of that is floated around by powerful people so that you will want to impress gatekeepers and do anything they want you to do. And instead, maybe instead of being the next whatever pop star that probably I can't stand, well, think of Britney Spears and how famous she was.
Yeah, wow.
And what we're finding out now is that she's been owned most of this time.
Like all of it.
like all of it.
Yeah.
Her father. And
Well, I just meant her career-wise.
yeah, the record label and her father. She, as an adult, is not in. They say just her finances, but she's not in control of anything. They force her to take meds. They decide what she wears. They decide where she's touring. She's declared mentally incompetent. Is that the life you want?
Right.
Call your own shots and maybe dare to dream that you don't have to be the next big pop star. That maybe your dream is just to perform and be happy. And if that's the case, that's not really minimizing your dream by not playing stadiums all over the world. You're actually being able to play smaller clubs and interact and
be a functional adult.
And have, again, stability and happiness and thrive in your life. And that's so much better than being told you have to be on meds all the time and being owned.
And can't dress yourself.
And can't even dress yourself.
Yeah.
So
there's literally stories of artists who, I mean, it's gone that far.
And, well, there is. And Prince talked about this a lot, and they made fun of him. And they mocked him in media a lot because they didn't want that truth to be out.
Right.
But it is a truth. It is a big truth that you are a slave to the label under contract.
Where he wrote that in lipstick on his cheek?
Yeah.
Slave. You know how he got out of that contract, right? I think it was Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
They ended up he had 2 records left on that deal, and that's when he changed his name to The Symbol.
Yeah.
So they ended up having to put greatest hits records, out on that. And then once those came out, the contract was up. He got his name back, and he had already. And what it all stemmed from was that he had done an album, and they wouldn't put it out. And I forget the name of the album off the top of my head, but it was a great album. It was when he was The Symbol.
Yeah.
And I want to say Diamonds and Pearls was on it. This is like when we were probably in high school.
Yeah, I remember that album.
I think, and don't quote me again. I don't know if I'm 100% on that, but that's very important. I think for the youth to understand now.
Yeah, well, people that have tried to leave some of those contracts they got labeled as crazy. Think about Dave Chappelle. Whatever happened there.
Yeah.
And
they offered him $50 million.
And whatever happened there, he had to flee to freaking Africa.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was a meltdown. Something went on because as things have come to light over the years, so it wasn't my initial thought. My initial thought was, oh, this person's on a lot of cocaine and crazy.
Yeah.
But as things have come to light over the course of the last many years, probably he wasn't crazy and he was fleeing something.
Yeah.
And there's conjecture as to what, and there's some pretty good evidence as to what, and he's alluded as to what, but I can't say for 100%.
Right.
But there are so many actors out there that as they've tried to say, hey, I couldn't walk from this contract, or this person tried to assault me, and some of them were men.
Yes.
Think about Terry Crews, how they tried to bury him, or Brendan Fraser, how they tried to bury him.
Cameron Diaz.
Yeah, and so maybe you don't want that kind of fame. Maybe you would rather be happy calling your own shots and being able to be in control of your own life.
A band like Tool is a great example of that.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, and then it was 13 years from album to album?
Yeah.
And then when the new one came out, everybody freaked out about it, and then a lot of people were like, that was really underwhelming. I was like, yeah, because you can just go 13 years without making a record, and everybody still wants to hear it.
Yeah, well, I liked their new
I thought
album.
it was great myself, yeah. So, I think we've had a pretty productive and awesome conversation. Thank you so much for coming. It's really good to see you again.
It's really good to see you again.
Thank you.
And
it's always good. How can people follow you in social media?
Oh, okay. So Wicked Wonderland Empire, and we're on just about every platform. I'm not on TikTok yet. I should probably do that, but we're on just about everything else.
Isn't that going by the wayside?
I don't know. Is it?
Yeah, there's something happened where that's going.
I know they were
bye-bye.
trying to ban it.
Yeah,
but
I think they did.
All the kids are on it. No, it's still there.
Is it still there?
Yeah.
Okay. I've never used it, so that's like.
Yeah, and so I haven't used it either. So
Wow.
I'm on just about everything.
Ginger, we've gotten old.
Yeah.
I had to whisper that.
Well, and I have, but I'm an ancient vampire, so it's okay. I can be old.
Oh, that's right.
And-
So you're like actually like 4,200 years old?
Yeah, and if
Nice.
I get outdated enough, I'll just come back into style eventually.
Totally. Like the Vampire Lestat.
Yeah. So it'll totally work out. So yeah, you can find me on Wicked Wonderland Empire on just about every platform. Some I've developed more than others, and so some are very well developed, and some, like mine's, is kind of like this one little room I haven't looked at in a year or two. And then I'm also known as the Red Empress when I perform. And then my band is Lithium Dolls. So yeah, that's how you find me.
So we can find you all those ways. I follow
Yeah.
you just, I mean, obviously we know each other personally, so
Yeah.
I follow all your stuff. I see you everywhere. I always I'm a really big proponent of in the promotion of our peers to
Yeah.
make sure to at least show support on that stuff. Because you know how hard it is to get to everybody's shows.
Oh yeah.
Like-
Well, and you can follow a lot of my public stuff, but there are some things where I don't just friend everybody on every social media site. I only friend people I know.
Right.
So I have a lot of friends, but I've met them.
Right.
Because I was touring a lot. So
I should be more
yeah.
like that sometimes.
yeah,
On the Facebook especially.
yeah, because then you get a lot of people yelling at you.
Well, actually, you know what's crazy is all those people that yell at me are people that I actually know.
So they feel good with yelling at you.
Well, I guess they must be used to it or something. But
Yeah.
I've really noticed one thing about that. And this is just me personally, but a lot of those people are very venomous and hateful and spiteful towards me
Yeah.
over like just I dare say over my opinions, but it's more like just over where I'm at as an adult. I think is the best way to put it. Like
Yeah,
where
well,
I'm sitting.
I explained some of that.
You
Is
did.
that yeah, and
You
so
did.
you do get that, and then some people are just very different on social media. You sit and talk to them in person, and you're just great, and everybody gets along. But
Right.
on social media, they are very staunch in their opinions, and they want to dig deep, and they want to get fighty. And
Yes.
if you are saying something that does not fit their polarized side, then they hate you.
Correct.
And it's like, well, wait a minute. I have opened myself up to being able to accept that you also have opinions, and I've told you you are free to express them.
Correct.
Why do we have to have personal attacks? And so I very actively just let people know you're not going to personally attack me or anyone else on my wall. So I'll delete your comment.
I've
I'm
done
not
that
going to
before.
unfriend you. I'm
Yeah.
just going to delete your comment, and so they won't read it, neither will I, if you're going to do that. If that's what you have to resort to and you can't make your point without it, then you had no point.
Correct. I
You know?
agree with you 100% with that. That's very well put,
Thanks.
actually. So, you got anything in closing, really, pretty much? You got anything coming up, entertainment-wise?
We're
soon,
doing Electric Tea Party on the 19th, and that's a virtual show.
or- Okay.
And that's going to be pretty cool. We've got some good people on the bill, and so that's something to look up on our site. And we're going to do that till things open up enough that we feel safe and comfortable with everybody being able to be together personally.
And give hugs.
And give hugs.
Yes.
And I mean, there is a lot of ways to practice safety and still be able to do things like give hugs. And I also am kind of on board with you in looking at numbers. We had a very poor reaction to how things went. But, I think that we can still manage to do things a certain way and so a lot of our shows will be virtual for a while.
Yes,
and
they will be.
we're developing a platform where when they do open up and we do have live shows, this is a platform we're going to continue to use so that people all over the world can participate.
Agreed.
And so
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. So I'm developing that, and I'm using this time to develop that so that
Nice.
you can be anywhere and participate in a show, or you can purchase the video of what happened at the show after the fact. And we'll have things pointed at like a couple of scene spaces or the stage so that people know if they're walking into it. We're not just going to film everybody that's at a party.
Right.
So people will know that they're
Well,
being
and
filmed.
you have a purpose.
Yeah. And so that way you can participate in either way. Personally, I like being at a live show and the energy of doing that and being able to see my friends.
Me too.
And it is very different, but it is nice when, hey, your favorite band is performing across the world. You're obviously not flying there, so you could pay a fee to watch the show.
Online.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That'd
so that's
be
what
great.
we're doing. Yeah.
That sounds really cool. And then can people find and what's it called again? The next event? The Tea Party?
Electric Tea Party.
Electric Tea Party. Okay, I want to make sure I
Yeah.
said it right. Where can we find that, on Facebook or
Yeah.
Facebook Live?
So it's on, you would not be able to watch it without purchasing a ticket. And then you get
Okay.
ticketing instructions, and the video gets sent to you.
Oh, I see.
And and we send out the links as it's time to watch the link.
I get it.
And
okay.
so you're all watching it together at the same time. And that's
Very
kind of
cool.
a cool way to do
That's
it.
way cool. That's
Yeah.
actually a very new way of doing that, to
Yeah.
me at least. I've never heard of anybody, I've never heard of anybody doing it that way.
I don't think they have. I think I
Yeah.
just sort of made it up in my own head because I was sitting here with this puzzle of how do I solve this? I don't want to be yet another person doing a live stream event for free. I don't always make a lot of money, so I don't want to sound money-centric when I'm putting on a show, but my performers need paid.
Correct.
And not just because they're demanding it, they deserve that. Unless they have chosen to work for a percentage or they are working for, sometimes I'll let them come and get spa services if that's what they want for their pay
Yeah.
or whatever, because they might need it. Maybe they would like to avoid surgery today, so
Right.
I'm probably going to give them double the spa services, perhaps, but they deserve to get something. And then whoever is helping put that together and the behind-the-scenes people, they deserve to get
They deserve
something.
to get paid, yeah.
And I think that it's a very bad idea to continue putting all of this stuff out for free all the time
I agree
because
with you.
people do not value what they get for free.
You're right.
And then they will come to expect that everything should be free. And how are we supposed to maintain a music industry that isn't making any money at all? You need to get something. People have to take time off work. People have to get babysitters.
Mm-hmm.
They have to buy equipment. They have to buy costumes. They need at least to break even on a show.
Right.
And if we're just going, go out there, slave, and work for us, and cracking a whip, that's really not good for our performers, and it will make it so that the people that are truly talented stop performing.
That's
And
a very good point.
that you will only get very, very bad, subpar performances from people that just don't care if they make any money at it. And so I looked at this and I went, how can we make it so that this is affordable for people at home? It's fun and entertaining and worth it for people at home. They'll enjoy it. It's worthwhile for them. And that also the performers from around the world that are in this get paid. And this is just kind of what I came up with. And then we're all interacting with it at the same time.
Right, that's very cool.
Yeah.
I like the concept.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, people can steal it. I put it on a podcast for a reason. By all means, use that and do it and develop your format, and maybe you'll do
Yeah,
it
right.
better than me, and I'll steal from you. I don't care.
I think we should have more of that kind of, I don't think it's stealing, but I mean just kind of like someone comes up with an idea and then I'm like you come up with an idea and then
Yeah.
I make it better and then you take it back and make it better and then, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
well,
kind of build, everybody kind of come together and build each other up.
and create. There are some nuances to that. Like for some people, you might go to a show and see a show you really liked and then totally take somebody else's total look, and that's really not a good way to go. Like totally taking their show. But for some things, you might go, hey, that's a good idea. How about I incorporate some of that into what I'm doing and build on it? And you might even talk to that person and say, hey, or when you go ahead and post about it or promote it, you pay homage to that and say, we got that idea from this, so hey, buy their thing.
Right.
And then you're networking instead of just taking it,
Very well said.
Yeah.
I like that idea. Well, and that's always, been my thing.
You've always
on the
been a
production
networker
side.
as far as I've
Yeah,
known.
the networking and the just getting stuff out there and borrowing and trading and throwing ideas, making sure people get paid.
Yeah.
Another thing too, I think is important, and this is my advice to all the youngsters: learn how to negotiate.
Yeah, definitely learn how to negotiate your pay.
Yes.
And what you're getting out of a show, because it's not always all about pay.
Right.
And there are a lot of things on a contract, so look over
and don't
what a
negotiate
contract-
for free alcohol.
Yeah.
That's like, and you remember back in the early 2000s, like when I moved here in 2000, back in those days, I mean, we used to get like play shows and we'd make like $100 and get hammered for free. You
Yeah.
know, like people would go out to party and there was always the built-in crowd.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Then fast forward 15 years and now, like circa 2015 or so. And then it's just like there's a show everywhere every night and nobody cares. And they're just out to like people are actually going out to go to the shows and they're partying less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times if I'm performing, I give myself a 2-drink, and sometimes I ask my band to kind of keep to that too.
Yeah.
Until after the show's over, because I don't want to get up on stage and Amy Winehouse it, And
What did she do?
she in Japan, she got booed off a stage, which is really hard to do. I think it was Japan, or was it Korea? Somewhere in Asia.
Japan?
Yeah, and that's really hard to do because those
They
are
love,
forgiving audiences, and she was so bad. And then I think she fell too, but it's because she was real fucked up.
Okay.
And it's really sad, and her whole story and her whole life is really sad.
Oh,
but
it was, yeah.
let's not go out and be those broken people. Let's
Right.
try to do better. And even sometimes the point of my art, like Lithium Dolls is called Lithium Dolls for a reason, because I had the ability, when I was much younger, I was one of those people diagnosed with depression as a teenager, and I had a choice to make. Am I going to take the med, or am I going to try to work on this? And so instead, I did diet and counseling, and that did work.
Nice.
And I got off of that diagnosis.
Nice.
And so that is possible. I don't think it's necessarily possible for every single person, but it is very possible. And for most people, a lot of depression isn't necessarily the reuptake system that they talk about. It's a lot of times it is something wrong in your body, and whether that's a chemical imbalance or whether or not it's a dietary imbalance, or maybe you have a thyroid problem, or maybe you have heart disease. It can be a number of things, and sometimes they're just way too quick to diagnose it as that.
To put Band-Aids on it.
Uh-huh.
As opposed to actually figure out the root cause.
And get that Prozac kickback. I can just write that right now. And
Right.
so
there's $1,000.
Yeah. So with Lithium Dolls, it was all about that. And it was a DJ friend of mine that coined the term, but he talked about, I could sit in the corner and be some lithium doll.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Or I could learn to get better, and I could do well with my life. And we were talking about that because we had both done the same thing. We were talking about how we had done those things, and I was like, I really like that. I'm going to name my band that, because I had a band at the time. And so...
And how long ago did you start Lithium Dolls?
I guess I've had it for about a decade or so.
Okay.
Now. And so it has been a while. I had slowed things down with it a little bit because I had my little boy. But in some ways that actually ended up benefiting me instead of going and being a road slave. So
right.
That was good. So with that band, a lot of our songs can come off on the surface as being very trite. And if you want to interpret it that way, that's cool. It's still fun. But then a lot of them have an underlying message about this is what life is like when you are either self or prescription medicating and doing all the drugs and drinking, and what it's going to be like for you and what goes on in your head. And this is all of the damage and and so in a way it's a message about how to deal with that. And presenting, here is you being broken, and here's you dancing around being this broken little doll, or you can transcend. And so I think that with your art you can put out these messages about doing more than just being some broken little doll out there, right?
Right.
So yeah. Anyways, I think we were due to go ahead and wrap you
We
up
were.
like a while ago.
It's all right.
And
Hey,
I
like I
gotta-
said, it's freeform.
Yeah.
So, no, that's awesome, Ginger. Again, it's great to see you again. It's been a while. I know it's been
Yeah.
since what, last summer?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think it's been just past a year.
Yeah, just over because
Yeah.
Wine Fest was on the 10th last year. So,
Yeah.
but it's great to see you. Thanks for coming out and coming over. Tell Emmanuel I said hi.
I will.
I haven't seen him in because I saw him the last time
At
I
the
saw
same
you.
time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And everybody out there, Channel 99 Studio on the YouTube. And this is episode 2 of Sorry About Your Feelings. We had a great conversation.
Yeah.
Ginger Christensen, again, my guest.
Thanks.
And you know where to follow her. Pay attention, watch till the end. And we want to thank Tim Meyer and the producer of the show and Channel 99 Studio. From the Safe Space, I'm Jimmy Rhodes. Love you. Bye.